Legal authority. Well, legal authority, they have two components. There's the primary and the secondary. With primary legal authority, we're focused on laws. Everything that's focused on laws as it relates from federal to state to county and municipal laws. Secondary laws are actually opinions that may be provided from um, legal articles, reviews, scholarly writings, and other citations that are related to the law. For that reason, we are going to use primary authority. Sober living homes in California. Options for state and local registration. Sober living houses in the state of California are actually it's really popular. The reason for the popularity, it could be in a range of different reasons why people may decide to go to a sober living facility, and it is a focus for people to actually look at opportunities um, to be in a sober environment. So this is the reason why a lot of the this is the reason why ordinances and laws are there readily available for people who do look for sober living. Now, it says don't be loitering when you could be working. And it wasn't really to be negative. As you see here with the house, there's a lot of different things from that is addictive, um, not only substance abuse, but there may even be transitional housing for people who may be coming out of prison. There also may be someone who is a gambler. Um, there may be an array of different reasons why people need to not be in the norm of, let's say, a society as they're trying to rehabilitate. That would be the same thing associated with a lot of other services that we have that may be relative to runaways or homelessness and mental health, and collectively not so much about, let's say, the scope of poverty, but being addicted can lead to poverty. Okay, so anyway, the state of California actually has different regulations. They have certifications. There's also there's also an establishment for, let's say, sobriety properties, and are these properties were to sway away from, let's say, facilities or institutions or things that may um, make people feel uncomfortable about being in an environment to say, okay, well, listen, I really do need to, think about not gambling. I do want to get off of drugs. I'm finding myself in an addictive pattern. So there were people who were really at an effort to try to mandate or lessen, let's say, the restrictions or the ordinances that was there for people who wanted to extend their home, for people who didn't want to go into an institution or into institution type environment. So anyway, as I was looking and talking about what would be the characteristics of why, let's say, a community at large wouldn't want a transitional home or some kind of group home that is focused on, let's say, somebody who was involved with drugs. They may associate that character with um, who they know or what kind of people that they will bring inside the community. If they're not really at practice to try to be rehabilitated, now you're looking at a person's behavior. I mean, it could be different things. It could be prostitution, it could be having the dope dealer know where you live, or um, unwanted traffic that may come inside the community. And this is the reason why a lot of communities oppose it. Okay. So, character evidence, even though I mean, as I was looking for a rule that would apply, it seemed like character evidence would probably be one of the main reasons why a lot of communities would not want to have very amounts of different amounts of transitional homes or rehabilitation properties inside their community. So you do have some places where, I mean, you don't know that they exist, unless you're a part of the zoning or knowing about it. So there you go. In regards to the neighborhood, and them wanting to know, well, what kind of housing is it going to be? There's federal laws and regulations that actually says that a person who's addicted to drugs and alcohol are actually considered disabled. Okay, so they're part of the Disability Act, and I kind of looked at it a little bit and just say, well, you know what? There may be some people say, well, listen, well, I'm different. Well, look at them, So there's a lot of comparisons. I mean, you know, having an addiction issue is not limited to just poverty or people that we may see on the street that is homeless, right? So it could be some very rich and wealthy people. But anyway, this right here is the Fair Housing Act, which is federal, and it had defined what disabled is, and those restrictions that they actually have prohibited people from doing certain zonings and placing restrictions on people who wanted who wanted and needed to come back into society. Okay, and so getting back into society, there was some people who were discriminating against people beyond just color, but then what they thought under, let's just say, a character or what they have done, or if they were incarcerated, what they assumed would probably come back inside their community that they did not want. So California state laws and regulations, there are a lot of them that are actually under the California Health and Safety Code for the state of California. There's um there's more than one, but this particular one, it was talking about treatment facilities as well as drug abuse and the scope of being licensed in the state of California for certain things. So for state of California, if you're running a facility, it can be there are licensing requirements, okay? There's also credential requirements and so on and so forth. But the thing is that when a person is interested in actually opening a house or providing certain things for, let's just say, people who are going through are wanting to go through a sober living, that there are steps to actually becoming, let's say, um, or there are steps to satisfy the requirement to open a transitional home or a group home. Here at this particular one, it says the over concentration. Now, this over concentration, the way that works is that is actually an effort to say, well, you know what, if there's so many of them, then how would we be able to identify? Um, we want to be able to identify in the community if there's so many facilities that are, let's say, over concentrating a place to say that is actually rehabilitating. Okay, so you may have some people say, okay, well, yeah, this neighborhood, that neighborhood, or it could be a whole bunch of them in one neighborhood. Then it'll just be going back into, let's just say, something that's looking infested, opposed to something that's people trying to rehabilitate themselves and take advantage of the different programs that are available to them. California, when I was looking, I did look at some of the legislation for the state of California, and just the one that I had highlighted for let's say a over concentration of many different facilities. Well, in 2016, there's a AB 203. So the AB 203, which is here, um, had some kind of conversation to talk about proximity. There are laws that are associated with schools, how far as actual sober living property or transitional housing can be close to a school, let's say some liquor stores. Like I said, there was an array of different. Um, Matter of fact, it was just so lucrative that there is a lot of different information that, like I said, if somebody really wanted to focus on a particular, let's say, substance, that there are rules that apply to, let's say, each one of them. So it don't necessarily have to be drugs. It could be gambling. It could be um, someone who's coming out of prison. So those are some of the common ones, okay? And mental health, okay? So here it says that there was another bill. There's actually 25 bills that I looked at, and only three of them actually looked like they were either held or it was just inactive. But surprisingly, AB 2403, it is a law that is associated, which we will see here. Well, I guess we're not going to go back to the previous slide, but it is there where it's actually law for the state of California. To zoning regulations, okay, and talk about their discrimination. It says that, city, county, and any of those local government agencies that that the state itself don't have all the details. If you go to the county has their maps, the city have their maps, the state have their maps, right? So I think that the state itself knows that the city and the county know exactly what they need or what is available, but they cannot discriminate. So as it was said before, Americans with Disability Act, it is in state law, it is a law. Okay, so it is a law. Okay, so that took place in 1990. And the way that some of that reads is that alcoholics are addicts, and that um, said as long as they're trying to recover and they didn't have any kind of convictions, that they're part of a protected class. Okay, a protected class of people that they are actually labeled as, or they're disabled people, right? So, I mean, we can look at a variety of different things, but the land and like where they're building. And so, if you ask me, this is an opinion, I think that maybe that consideration should be taking place where there is, let's say, let's just say, a reserve space where people are able, where the government itself can build. But then, if they're looking at making society for people who are transitioning and make a society more improved than what they were experiencing, then it would be a mixed use of people inside of one environment. So I mean, that's just kind of the way that it is and the way that it looks. Interestingly, too, is that there are um, very expensive properties. They have properties that, or if you're going to a particular program, it could be, let's say, $25,000, all the way to, or at least to, let's say, $400 a month. So, in regards to, let's say, the renting, I mean, there's ordinance. So Los Angeles City Planning, they actually have a low density zone assembly, where that in itself is AB 1763 for the county of Los Angeles. And then there's also permits that are needed, and you will find the permits out at section 22166040 is there on the bottom. And then also the city of Los Angeles have a city planning, where they actually look at what is available, how many people they're able to put in one. So if you see here that the local efforts to regulate sober living homes, that there may be some restrictions, or they say, okay, well, listen, if there's one property, let's say six people could stay there. You know what I mean? If there's, let's say, an addition built onto the property, there may be some regulations as it relates to that. Okay, so the single family homes can be boarding homes, And there's some restrictions that may apply, but licensing, being licensed and being having credentials. Matter of fact, I mean, I think I had read something where they wanted even the administrator or whatever, everybody had to be sober in some way. I put this here. It is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, the organization that actually had compiled the paperwork. They didn't really mention them, but when you look at the government has so many different resources. It is lucrative. So the thought is that if you want to be in sobriety, you can. There are resources available to help people, whether they're in poverty or whether they're very rich. So if people want to be find sobriety in so many different ways, there's resources available to them. And so this particular link is lucrative, along with whatever we have here in the state of California, with the county as well as the local. So on the end, to talk about sobriety, it says here, this is actually a poem, and it says addiction can turn a perfectly healthy individual to a complete mess. So it's about us making the right decisions and knowing right from wrong, and simply saying no or simply saying yes, right? So sobriety, as it relates to, let's say, property, the goal is to thank those who actually have placed a focus on helping those in need. We never know who is who, and that extended help and that privacy has been ultimate at an extended hand and arm to help people become free from substances, whether they abuse it or not. Thank you. Irene Ratliff.